Okay. Let me just tweet this out. We should be live. We are live. 15 people here, which is good. Just clean off this really quickly. All right. Let me tweet this out. So episode 3, I think this is the third week that we've done this. Thanks for everyone who decided to come back after last week. Last week was a bit of a tough week. Derrick Henry, not so great. Dalvin Cook wasn't great either. So game script in that game was just really strange. But yeah, it was just sort of a weird week in that you sort of had to make a couple decisions that, made you win or lose your week. David Montgomery was sort of on the fence as far as whether he was a good player or not. Darren Waller, more catches or more receiving yards than he had in his previous 5 games. It was a weird week, but the good news is, as Bill Belichick said, we're on to Cincinnati. And yeah, let's get into it. So gonna go about an hour. Last time we were about an hour and 20 or so. We'll go as long as people have questions and want to hear. I know there's a lot of playoff talk. So I'll be happy to answer season-long questions too. I think the only thing that I'll clarify, if you could help me out and just say FanDuel, DraftKings, season-long, PPR, standard, just give some sort of indication as far as how I can best answer the question would be good. So let's jump into it. Going to grab some coffee. My hair is an absolute disaster. I've been working on DeAndre Washington news, and I'm sure we'll talk about that here in a little bit all day. But let's get into it. Okay. Talk to you about running backs. Stick around. We're going to talk about a lot of running backs this week. FanDuel cash running backs. Washington, Henry, and Eckler. Washington, yes. I think, what is he, 4,800? It's too cheap. I mean, Washington, for those that didn't see the news, Myles Gaskin is out with COVID-19. Salvin Ahmed is still out, and then Matt Breida is still out. So all they're going to have this week is DeAndre Washington and Patrick Laird. I don't see this being Patrick Laird time. I think he's had his chances. He's going to be a receiving back. So Washington, absolutely yes. I'm going back to Derrick Henry. I'm not afraid of being game scripted against Jacksonville. I think he's in a great spot this week. Eckler is an interesting one. I'm not on it on FanDuel because of the floor is a little bit too low. So for me, let me look at what I have at the moment. I've sort of bounced around a couple different times throughout the day, and my article does currently have, and I'll post a link to it, the free Sunday update. We actually did one for Saturday for those that aren't Football Guys subscribers. But right now I have Derrick Henry, DeAndre Washington, and David Montgomery as the third running back. Montgomery in a good spot against Houston. The other running backs that I really like this week, it's sort of those three. But if I go through and you can find additional salary, I do like James Robinson quite a bit. Eckler, I have sort of as a fringe guy. I think that he's sort of on the border. Truly a ton of upside, but Justin Jackson was activated today. He's expected to play, so I don't know how that's going to impact Eckler. I think it will a little bit, which is a little bit of a concern. So you could, but I don't think it's a must play. My boy Baker is doing well. Yeah, Baker. When the team is good, but when Baker has time, he's a good quarterback. The problem is when he doesn't have time. You're pretty critical of Gio Bernard on the power grid. You had to use a yellow in your player pool and showing up in your sample lineups. Explain. On FanDuel, and my lineup has changed a couple times, but he sort of just fits. He's not in my current build. I don't think. I think with the value that opened up because of DeAndre Washington, Gio is not a great play. I think he's in a great matchup, but how many times have we tried to trust Gio Bernard this year? I mean, what is he averaging? I think 3.3 yards per carry. So the only reason I had him showing up as yellow in my article, and for those that don't know, I grade players green, yellow, or white, which means they're not in play. I had Gio as a yellow, which is like a fringe play, is because he's going to be popular. And if you had to go down that low before DeAndre Washington, I think DeAndre Washington is a much better play this week than Gio. Going down the list, Rodgers in cash on DraftKings. Let me just pull up DraftKings really quickly before I misquote prices all over the place. Let's see. Rodgers is the fourth highest at 7,500. I think you could definitely go there. I like Justin Herbert quite a bit as well at 68. And then if you wanted to go down the quarterback under 6,000 that I like, I'm going back to Old Man Rivers. So those three would be the three that I would be looking at. I know some people have, like Matt Ryan. The matchup there is a little bit difficult against the Chargers. I think they're allowing the third or fourth fewest. I can pull it up just really quickly. Third or fourth fewest fantasy points. Where is it? Where is it? They're allowing the third fewest passing yards per game to opposing quarterbacks. So I think it's Rodgers, Herbert, or Rivers for me this week. You could go Jalen Hurts, and I'm sure we'll talk about Jalen Hurts at some point. Hurts is a bit risky. I mean, he's more, I don't want to say more like Tua than he is like Lamar Jackson, and maybe he is, but he's going to run 8 to 10 times. But against New Orleans, I just don't know that the running upside is going to be there. If you're going to play him, I would play him on FanDuel. I think that he's 6,600 over there. You could definitely punt over there, but he's not going to throw. I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say he's not going to throw 300 yards. If he doesn't rush for a touchdown on DraftKings, because of the way scoring is over there with the bonuses, I think it's going to be more difficult. Let's see. FanDuel cash Brashard Perriman. Oh, what's his price? I liked him on DraftKings. I don't think I had him on my list for FanDuel. Yeah, 5,800. I think he's just too expensive. Some players that I like down in that range. Let's see. Players that I like down in that range more than him. Curtis Samuel, Kiki Cutie. You could go Russell Gage, although I wrote in my article today that, or it was in the props article that I do, that Gage is actually better with Julio Jones on the field than he is with him off the field. So I can just pull that stat up really quickly, as I'm sure some people would be interested in Gage. So Gage with Julio Jones in the lineup is 4.7 receptions and 7.1 targets. Without Julio, he only has 2.3 receptions and 4.3 targets. So is he a guy that can, and I talked about this last week with Brandon Cooks, sometimes it's not always addition when there's someone out. Sometimes just from a scheme standpoint, it becomes more difficult on those top end receivers or those secondary receivers to step into the top end receiver slot. John Lee in the chat. It's probably Austin because he just stays out of the way. Let's see. Best line of the year. Phil's internet connection is the Jets. Yeah, Phil's internet connection is not a good one. I'm falling behind on these questions, so apologies, and thanks everyone for jumping in asking some pretty solid questions so far. Top 5 running backs on FanDuel. Let me pull that up. I think it's Derrick Henry. The 3 that I mentioned earlier. So Henry, Washington, Montgomery for me, and then I think it's probably James Robinson and Aaron Jones. If you wanted to do a build where you didn't have Derrick Henry, I think that those 2 are completely fine to have in your lineup. Need one for a flex season long. Gio, Juju, Raheem Mostert, Devontae Parker. Let's see. Mostert. I think it's going to be Mostert or Juju for me. Yeah, I would probably go. I'm just not going Gio. Gio is probably the right answer, but I'm not doing it. If you need upside, I would go Mostert over Gio. But if you need just safety and you need 8 to 10 points with the hope he scores a touchdown, then go Gio. Yeah, Waller was crazy last week. I don't think anyone could see. If you saw it coming, you got a crystal ball somewhere in your house, because 200 yards was more than he had in his previous 5 games combined. If Jacobs sits or Jacobs becomes limited, do I start Edmonds or Singletary? Gio is available. I would go Gio over Edmonds or Singletary. I would go Gio over all of those, even though I don't love Gio. Cleveland missing their best guard. Do I think that Cleveland's run game is a lesser play this week? It depends what you're. I mean, it ultimately depends what you're evaluating. Does losing a guard hurt? Yes. Does it go? Is it going to hurt enough that you don't play Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt in a season-long league? You still play those guys, and then on a Sunday Monday matchup or lineup on DFS, I wouldn't play them just because the matchup with Brandon Williams and Calais Campbell back for Baltimore is not a great one. Yeah, Hurts is absolutely cash viable on FanDuel. I like him quite a bit. DraftKings cash pick 2: Chark, Samuel, Ayuk, Cutie, or Perryman. Chark, Cutie. I'm not going Chark. So Cutie. I think, and the reason I don't like Chark is I think Colin Johnson has a $3,300 GPP punt. I think he's seen 13 targets over his last 2 weeks. He's getting more of the deep ball action from Mike Glennon. Sometimes we see these games where the backup quarterback has a rapport with the third string or fourth string wide receiver, and that's sort of how that goes. So Samuel, Cutie, Ayuk. I would go Curtis Samuel and Cutie, however you pronounce it. Perryman, if you need the cash savings, he's a bit cheaper. Not much said about Mike Davis. Could he be a GPP play? Sure. I mean, does Mike Davis really get me excited? Not really. I mean, the problem is that he's not catching the passes that he was early on in the year. Could that change? Absolutely. As a GPP play, if you're building, 10 lineups, sure, why not? Throw them in one. Rodgers, Adam Swift stack in DraftKings GPP, too chalky. It'll be one of the more popular stacks, but if you do some things around it, I think it's a perfectly fine stack. Let's see. If you haven't already, if you could give this video, live stream a thumbs up, it really helps the channel and helps grow. I need to throw that in there as an or the Austin Lee and Cecil will hunt me down. So please give this a thumbs up if you haven't already. Mostert and Debo both under-touted this week, and I expect a lot of misdirection from the 49ers. Where's your thoughts on using one or both this week? I'm probably one of the ones that's under-touting them. I just see this game being low-scoring. Both have good defensive lines. Both have quarterback issues. If you believe it, if you believe in one or two of these guys, this is where you can have separation from the field. So I'm not going to talk you off of beliefs that you believe in strongly. Would I take Henry over Jones, FanDuel cash, since Adams is already locked? Yes. Jones is always a tough one for me because the consistency with him is a little bit less than guys like Henry or Cook, and his price is pretty pricey. So I would go up to Henry, play Adams, and that's how I'm starting. Cousins, Thielen, Jefferson, funnel. It's a lot of Vikings. It's a lot of Vikings, but they're going to have to throw the ball because Dalvin Cook is not going to have a great day. So I would probably pick one because Thielen and Jefferson combined are pretty pricey. But if you're going to play both, you might as well take another Buccaneer just because it's going to need to be a shootout type game. Do I like Gallman and do I like Zeke? Yes and yes. I loved Ezekiel Elliott on DraftKings. He might be my favorite running back over there this week. He's just underpriced at, what is he, 6,600? And it's a ridiculous price. It's an absolutely ridiculous price against Cincinnati, who's allowing 5 yards a carry. Elliott, I think he's averaging 19 carries per game over his last 5 or 6 games, something like that. So he's my favorite guy on DraftKings this week. Gallman, I mean, look, at 5,700, he's more of a GPP play. I think you're sort of banking on him to find the end zone at least once, probably twice. I like him on DraftKings a lot, or on FanDuel a lot more than I do DraftKings. Do I like the 49ers defense in DraftKings? Yes, they're probably my favorite defense over there. Favorite sacks for FanDuel cash? It's tough because Rodgers is overpriced. He's 9,100. So I don't know that I would go there. I'm playing Taysom Hill right now in cash. So I don't have any stacks. If you're destined and extremely have to go stacks, I would probably go Matt Ryan and Calvin Ridley. I think Ridley's in a pretty good spot with no Julio this week. Geo. 18 PPR, Rivers or Herbert. If you need upside, go Herbert, and I would probably do that. If you just want to be safe and get your 270 and 2, go Rivers, but I think Herbert has much more upside. No Melvin Gordon. He isn't selected. I'm assuming you mean on my article. Yeah, Melvin Gordon was just a little too pricey on FanDuel. I think he's a great DraftKings play at 5,200, but I would want to see him sort of down in that Gio Bernard area. I will say this, he was on the fringe of fringe to be selected. So if I look at points per dollar, typically it's about 2 that I want to target. He was at 1.9, so he just missed the cut of being a fringe play. Top 3 FanDuel cash quarterbacks, highest to lowest. Highest price to lowest priced? Or just, I guess I'll just do my favorite to... It's hard. Taysom Hill's my favorite. I think the rushing upside. He's in a pretty good spot this week. Patrick Mahomes, you can never go wrong, and he's the third. For some reason, he's the third most expensive quarterback instead of the most expensive quarterback. And then I'll have a tie for third in Rivers and Hurts. If you want to go all the way down to Hurts, I don't blame you. I think there's just a little bit too much risk for me this week. Is it a waste to stack on the Tampa side this week, or does it have some promise? I think it has promise. Coming off a bye, Godwin hasn't been healthy all year. He's probably the guy that I would go with. Mike Evans has been banged up. So if you want to go Brady, Godwin, and Thielen or Jefferson, it's not a bad way to go. I do like Ronald Jones this week on FanDuel a little bit. And I don't know if I selected him in my article or not. No, I didn't. And he just missed the cut as well. But I do like Ronald Jones a little bit this week. He'll probably get upgraded tonight when I update my article. Season-long PPR league. Is T. Higgins safe this week with the injury concerns? I need to know what other options you got, to be honest. I think he's borderline. If you have other options, I would probably look that way. For FanDuel Cash, do I think running back value permits me to go down from Henry to fit Kelsey in? It's a good question. I tried to fit Kelsey in and get a lineup that I really liked. You could. Am I going that way? No. I'm going back to the Derrick Henry well because I think the matchup is a good one. I think he's going to get 25 carries. I just don't know that there's enough value. Like there's some decent plays, but if you wanted to go Gio and DeAndre Washington, that might be a little bit too much. You could go, James Robinson, David Montgomery, Washington, something like that. Take the 1,600, but even that's going to be tough. For those that don't read the article, I'm actually going all the way down at the tight end position. Currently debating between Cole Kmet and Drew Sample. So Kmet, I really like this week. He's in a pretty good spot. He's taking over from that Jimmy Graham role that we saw earlier this year. So he's actually played on 78% of the snaps over the last 2 games. So I think they're trying to integrate the rookie. They're trying to see what he has and really trying to bring him along. 2 points per catch. Wow. That changes things. 2 points per catch. I would probably still go DeAndre Washington, to be honest. But man, is that a weird league. Do I think Ruggs will get more targets this week after last week's performance? No. I mean, it busted coverage. I don't think it's going to change all that much. Just because Greg Williams is a moron and decided to blitz. I don't think so. Adams, Davis, Samuel? Yeah, that's the way I'm going. Top tight end in cash, FanDuel, not including Kelsey. Yeah, that's the question. And that's the question I spent about 2 hours this morning looking into. A lot of people probably are going to say Darren Waller, but like I said, it might be a little bit point chasing. His price is up to 7,100. 200 yards last week. Do we think is that the Jets, who are the worst team against the tight end in football, or is it that they're getting back to bringing Waller in? So before that, he was averaging 37 yards per game over his last 5. So I think he's too risky for me in my builds. Hawkinson is okay, nothing special. And then the 2 guys I mentioned going all the way down, and Kmet and Sample, are a way that I'm thinking about pretty hard. Thoughts on DeAndre Swift if he plays FanDuel cash viable? Not cash. It's a great matchup. I understand the rationale, but I just don't believe in him just yet. Yeah, QD isn't 100%, so there is risk there, and you take away the 70-yard touchdown, and there's or 70-yard catch, and for sure there's risk. But on DraftKings, I think the possession is enough. On FanDuel, I don't have him in my build right now. I have what do I have? I have two different builds. I have Adams, Davis, and Anderson, and Adams, Ridley, and Samuel. So two different builds there right now. Check the article on Sunday. I'll tweet it out. Tweet it out tomorrow morning where I actually land. If you need upside, I would go Lamar. Don't like it, but he showed more life last week in his rushing abilities. So I would probably go Lamar. It's here's how I'm looking at it, right? So Darnell Mooney versus Cole Kmet, it's probably pretty close when you factor in touchdown upside between those two. And then Thielen versus Kelsey, maybe a slight edge to Kelsey. And then Hill versus Hurts, it's pretty significant for me. So I'm going Hill, Kmet, Thielen. But it's all about the risk that you want to take. So if Kelsey has one of those 120 and 2, I'm probably screwed. Browns Ravens high scoring or divisional slugfest? I think the Ravens win pretty easily again, but I'm not a believer in the Browns, particularly when Baker is under pressure. Season long, got to play one. Crowder, Jones, Parker. Just looking here. Jones, Parker, Devontae Parker. They're not on the main slate. Yeah, that's why we're ignoring them. They're not on the main slate. But against Buffalo, I mean, Buffalo hasn't been great outside of, I mean, Tre'Davious White's still there, but outside of that, they've led up some big games to, they're playing Buffalo, right? I think. Yeah. Led up some big games to opposing quarterbacks. So, yeah, that's the reason they're not being talked about. John DiLeonardo, I don't know your question. It just says in cash? FanDuel? I don't know. Ask it again, I'll answer it. Do you have a problem stacking the Tampa side this week, or is it hard to find a bring back? I think there's both Thielen or Jefferson are pretty easy bring back. So I would go, if you want to stack it, I would go Brady, Godwin, Thielen because of the touchdown upside. Nobody's talking about Deshaun Watson because two things. One is he's too highly priced. I think that game's in Chicago, and I'm about 25 minutes north of the stadium in Chicago, and I don't know what the weather is tomorrow, but we have had torrential down. It's going to be nice tomorrow. Interesting. We've had rain all day today and yesterday, and it's going to be cold. And let me make sure that game's in Chicago. Yeah, it's in Chicago. He's too high priced. He doesn't have Fuller. He doesn't have Cobb. The weapons, they didn't look great last week. He scored a rushing touchdown, which saved him. But if you want to take a shot in a GPP, that certainly is a bounce back. I think a lot of people were burned by Cooks last week. Gio and Zeke in the same lineup in cash, or would you swap out Gio for Washington? Zeke is in cash for DraftKings. I think he's too high priced on FanDuel. Yeah, 7,600 is too high on FanDuel. All right, it's actually about right. It's about right on FanDuel. I would go Washington over Zeke. Gio or McKissick, DraftKings GPPs. I like Gio more, but he's going to be a lot more rostered. So if we're talking just pure upside, I can make a case for McKissick there. Like if you want to just fade Gio, you certainly could. McKissick has those 10 catch upside games. Peyton Barber sucks. Like he's just not. He'll probably fall into the end zone and be a FanDuel play and whatever. But are they really going to trust, particularly if they fall behind? One interesting way to do this, if you like McKissick, is go like Brandon Ayuk and J.D. McKissick in the same lineup and hope that the 49ers get out early. Hey, John, how's it going? Yeah, I like Ronald Jones this week a lot. I think coming off the bye, he very easily could get a majority of the touches. I think that he could get Bruce Arians talked a little bit about that, and that he's going to, he's in a better spot when he gets 16 to 18 touches. He's the more electric, explosive runner. I think that Ronald Jones is a fantastic GPP play this week. He was borderline cash viable for me when I was writing up my article this week. Gallup, DraftKings, cash. If I'm playing one Dallas receiver in cash, it would be Michael Gallup. Now, the question is whether you have to go there. So with the value that's opened up with DeAndre Washington at, what is he, 4,000? I think he's 4,000. And looking down, you have Rashad Perryman at 3,900 and Gallup. Between those two, it's really close. So if you like Gallup there, that's fine. But if you really want to go stars and scrubs, I think you could. Gallup is really starting to be the second receiver over CeeDee Lamb. 13 catches in his last two games. CeeDee Lamb is they're just using him as almost like a possession receiver. It's really weird. Don't they split with Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette? They do, but there's a lot of talk about that split being more favorable for Jones than Fournette. Let me just pull up snap counts to see if there's any trends that we can actually take. Yeah, so it hasn't been that way. So Jones is still getting less snaps than Fournette, but Arians was talking big about him. It's the reason I'm not cash viable, but if I'm looking at an upside guy, I think that they're going to try and establish a consistent running game. And you look at what he did against the Chiefs with 66 yards on just 9 carries. And then against the Panthers, he had 192 on 23 carries. So I think as they start thinking about playoffs, they need to figure this out. And coming off the bye, I think there's upside for Ronald Jones. Let's see. Are you crazy why no one is on the Vikings stack? Yeah, I think there's just this is a crazy week. It's really a crazy week. I was looking at our DraftKings lineup optimizer and quickly built 100 lineups or 150 lineups, and it spit out 100 lineups that were within 1 point of each other. There are just so many ways to go this week, and some of that is changing a little bit as we think about DeAndre Washington and how that impacts lineups and builds, and there's still finalization of rostership percentages. But if I think about the Minnesota game, I think the reason that people are off of it is that I think it's I don't know, it's a concern, but I just think there's a concern that Minnesota continues to try to run on Tampa Bay, which would be a mistake. Hurts or Glennon, DraftKings cash. Oh, that one's tough. As much as I like Mike Glennon, and I think he has upside because of the lack of Tennessee pass rush. Tennessee has the fewest sacks in football. I think the upside in Hurts is too good to pass up, to be honest. Glennon's a fine GPP play if you wanted to punt. I think he has 300 upside, 2 touchdowns potentially. Not on the slate. If you're playing a Sunday night game, I don't think there's any need to go down that far. Gallup or any Jets receiver. Perryman and Gallup are really close. I have Perryman just slightly higher. Get Phil on the live show. Yeah, I talked to him today. He was trying to make it work and wasn't able to. He'll join us one of these weeks. He's fixing his internet too. For those that watch the Power Grid, it was a bit of a disaster this week. He's buying an Ethernet cord and finally hardwiring in. Will I be playing Jeremy Sprinkle this week? No. I don't remember what year that was from. That was a while ago. It might have been last year, 2 years ago. I don't know. Is Tannehill cash game viable on FanDuel? If you don't want Henry and go Montgomery, Robinson, Washington, you could. If you don't go Henry, it could make sense to go Tannehill. I think that if one of those two will have a good game. Let me see what Tannehill is priced. I think he's 79. 79. Yeah, 79. So I have Watson slightly higher, Taysom Hill slightly higher, but if you're going fade on Henry and you want differentiation, I think it's a completely fine play. I like Justin Herbert on DraftKings. He's my favorite cash game quarterback. I like Austin Eckler. I'm not sure I would go it in cash. Keenan Allen, the problem with Keenan Allen is just the price. So if I think about Keenan Allen, what is his price? Keenan Allen, 8,500 on. I mean, that's a lot. It's a lot. The problem is that, if I'm going to go up to an $8,500 receiver, I might as well just find money for Devontae Adams. Yeah, I think that they do. I certainly think Herbert and Allen have good games, but it's just a price thing. Steelers and Yahoo they're on the Yahoo main slate. I keep forgetting about that. I don't play much Yahoo, admittedly. Now, I will say DeAndre Washington is minimum price there, so you can basically get whoever you want. But, do we trust Steelers receivers? That's where I'm struggling, right? So Deontay Johnson's probably the guy that you want to play if you're going that route, but it's half-point PPR. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's better ways to go this week. Dalton Schultz, Gallup, I think that's too much Chargers, to be honest. Or Chargers. What am I talking about? I need coffee. Cowboys. Too many Cowboys. Too many cooks in the kitchen. I would look at Sample. I would look at Komet. I would look at those guys instead of Dalton Schultz. I think Gallup. The problem with the Cowboys, and really, if we think about stacking, if you're stacking, you sort of want the game flow to go through 2 or 3 guys. But the problem with the Cowboys is they have Cooper, Lamb, Gallup, etc. I look 10 years younger now because of the no mustache. Interesting. Just a bounce back for A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's been more of a deep threat, so it could be. Like, it certainly could be if he catches a long one. I mean, he's only averaging 3 or 4 catches per game. That's the problem. Davis seems to be emerging. I don't know. I sort of still like Davis a little bit. And Brown's price hasn't come down. What is it? 8,000? Yeah, that's a lot. If he was in like the 7s, Calvin Ridley's $100 more than A.J. Brown. Give me Calvin Ridley with no Julio. Carolina versus Dallas. Dallas. Give me Dallas against Brandon Allen. And I think that there's a chance that we see Ryan Finley at some point if they get behind. Allen's been dealing with injuries. And if Ryan Finley plays, give me all the Dallas. Savings, FanDuel, Cash, Hill, and Kelsey. Depends what the rest of your roster looks like. It could work, but you might as well have Mahomes at that point. And I know that that's probably difficult to get all 3 of those in the same lineup. Need 2 running backs and a flex from Robinson, Eckler, Drake, Gallman, Dobbins, Claypool. Win and you're probably in. So we're definitely going, well, I need to know if it's PPR or not, but Robinson and Eckler I think are definitely in. And then Drake, Gallman, Dobbins, or Claypool. So I would probably go with Drake, Gallman. Give me Wayne Gallman. I don't feel great about it, but I think he has the most consistent touches. Yeah, if you can give it a like, that would help this going. 96 people here. It seems like a lot of people like the later. We can push this back to a later time if that works better for a lot of people. I'm trying to be cognizant of the East Coast, but we seem to be progressing up, which is kind of unique. Hawkinson or Gronk? FanDuel Cash, Hawkinson. Running back Henry, Cash Game, DraftKings. Yeah, I think it's definitely in play. Henry and Adams, it makes it a little bit difficult, but with the savings that have opened up, particularly with DeAndre Washington, you could go one of the cheap receivers in a guy like Rashad Perryman. You could potentially play Michael Gallup. Any other cheap guys that I like down there? Let's see. I know Curtis Samuel's really cheap at 52. Not going Russell Gage. So yeah, I mean those are sort of the cheap guys at the receiver position. Better tight end, Henry or Tunyon? Henry. DraftKings Cash, you have Jones and Eckler locked. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are going to go that way. I think that it's just a little risky for me. I understand the play completely, but if I look at Aaron Jones, here's the problem. So the problem is 15, 17, 10, 13, 15, 10 touches. And receptions are sort of all over the place too. 3, 3, 1, 4, 5, 5, 3. So if I have a guy, I really want 17 carries, 20 carries, and he hasn't topped 18 all year. So I think at his price, it's just a little too pricey. I completely understand it. The matchup is a good one, but the matchup is a good one all over the field. And in the red zone, is he going to get the touches? Maybe. 7,600 though is not a horrible price. So you could do it if you're going to do it. I think DraftKings is the place to do it. I think FanDuel is just a little too expensive, a lot too expensive at 8,700. Best DraftKings cash tight end. If you can afford him, it's Travis Kelce. It's just tough. So let's take him out of the equation and say, I'll just throw a couple names out there. I don't know if there's a singular one. There's a lot of different options, but in the mid-range, I think Evan Ingram is interesting. In the low end, I think Hayden Hurst is an okay play with no Julio as well. Hawkinson's for sure in play in that mid-range as well. Probably my favorite guy out of those three. But he's a little more expensive at 5,000. But some of the names that I'm looking at are going way down, and they're Drew Sample and Cole Kmet, 2,900 and 3,000. I think that both second-round picks from the last 2 years, both teams that sort of need to figure out what they have, they've been more and more integrating in their offense. I think that they're both in good spots. Can we go Carr, Waller again, or is the Indy defense playing this out, fading this play out? Let's see what Indy's done against tight ends. Indianapolis against tight ends. The Jets are the worst team in football against the tight ends. So I don't think that it's and the Colts are the second best team in football against the tight ends. Probably not. I'm not going Waller this week. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I think the Ricky Seals-Jones call was good, and the Jeremy Sprinkle call was not so good. Do I think Tua could be benched for Fitz? No. I mean, when I say no, that doesn't mean that it's a 0% probability. I think that 5-10%, he would have to throw 2 or 3 picks. They need consistency. They need reps for the play. They still have playoff hopes. So I think they do. What's the Dolphins' record? And if not, they need they're 8-4. They need to get Tua ready. Hurts, Adams, or Herbert, Allen with Jones and Eckler. I would go Hurts and Adams. I think Adams is in a great spot this week. Curtis Samuel cash game on viable. Absolutely. He's one of the best plays this week. Yeah, I got the quarantine hair. We are completely locked down here in Illinois. My wife is 7 months pregnant, so I'm not going anywhere, to be honest. Thoughts on Teddy in DraftKings? Bridgewater? I'll admit I don't have him anywhere on my list. I think that this is a low-scoring game, sort of a no DJ Moore. I like the weapons more than I like the quarterback. I like mostly because of price. Robbie Anderson and Curtis Samuel are both in great spots, but if I look at 5,800, I'm looking at guys like Rivers has more of a consistent floor. I think that a guy like Matt Ryan is probably a better play. I don't know. I'm not going to say that Mitchell Trubisky is, but he has more upside, I think, for sure. Bridgewater is sort of meh. I'd rather have Adams or Henry in flex in cash. Right now I have both, which makes it tough. But if I had to pick one, I would go cash games, talk about just overall cash game principles, and I think he's cheaper. Yeah, he's $600 cheaper. Give me Derrick Henry. Can we trust Ty Johnson to produce? Tough matchup against Seattle. Compared to a good matchup last week against the Raiders. The Raiders are allowing the 5th most DraftKings points to opposing running backs, where Seattle is only allowing 75 yards per game rushing. They have allowed a lot through the air, but only fifth fewest yards per game. Only if Gore is out would I consider Ty Johnson, and it's looking like Gore. I think the last I looked, he's going to play. DraftKings Washington a must play in cash, absolutely at $4,000. If you're not playing DeAndre Washington in cash, sign up for my games or DM me on Twitter, and we'll play. But GPPs, it's going to be popular, man. He's going to be 30 to 40%, somewhere in that range. But it allows you to do so much in a week that we just don't have a lot of value. So I'm probably going that route. PPR, DeAndre Washington or Duke? DeAndre Washington. Unless you're in Florida or Texas, YouTube is I don't know what that means. Do I recommend playing one? I'm guessing that means one lineup, considering how lopsided slates have been. I still am going with one, although this week I might go two. I might go two, but most of the time I've just been going one. I don't blame anyone that wants to go three, and I would typically go, if I'm going to go one, if you're going to go two, you might as well go three, because going 1-1 each week, you're just going to lose to the rake. So hopefully going 2-1 each week is possible, especially if you're playing 50-50s or double ups. If you're playing head-to-heads, you can go all one, but it's risky, and it's just about your risk factor, to be honest. Season-long PPR, DeAndre Washington. I think we already answered that. Yeah, Robbie Anderson's in a great spot. And thanks, everyone, for the congratulations. Yeah, I sort of look like Marv from Home Alone, especially with the mustache that I shaved off. Jonathan Taylor cash on DraftKings. No, I don't think you need to do that. What's his price? I'll try and find some people that are around his area. Taylor, 5,800. I think he's a good GPP play, to be honest. I think he's in a really good spot from that aspect, but the floor is still there. I would go down to Geo. I would go down to JD McKissick. I would go down to DeAndre Washington before I would go up to Taylor. He's sort of stuck in that mid-range a little bit. Yeah, someone asked him, Phil, is that you, about Jonathan Taylor? Pretty funny. Early slate only. No, I think we're primarily talking about unless you're referring to some other comment I missed. I've been talking about the main slate for most of the day. I'll answer questions about Pittsburgh or Buffalo. I don't love the game, to be honest. I think that, it's not a game that I'm going out of my way to target. Maybe you could think about Stephon Diggs as a GPP play. Maybe. But it's a tough matchup for Buffalo. And then on the Pittsburgh side of the ball, Deontay Johnson, always a PPR monster, but Do I like anyone else there? Not really. James Conner? No. So I'm just not on those games, to be honest. Hopkins or Thielen in PPR? I would go, let me just confirm. I think the answer is Hopkins, but yeah, it is Hopkins. Is Tim Patrick chalky? I don't think he's chalky. I think that he's going to be 7 to 10%, something like that. Is this a good week to punt so you can get studs? Certainly with the news of DeAndre Washington, I think absolutely that's opened up a lot of value. And then there's some cheap wide receivers, so I wouldn't go crazy. I would take one or two of those guys, but I don't know that I would go 3 or 4. I think that you can build some pretty good lineups with with 1 or 2 of those guys, and then maybe 3, but I wouldn't go anything more than that. Thoughts on Alvin Kamara? No, thank you. The price just hasn't come down enough. Facing a really good run defense in Philadelphia. Myles Gaskin is out. He tested positive or was placed on the COVID-19 list. You're playing only 1 p.m. only FanDuel. Do I recommend that? I mean, do what makes you happy, man. That's what I try to tell everyone. Like, play this game for fun. A lot of people put a lot of time into this. I put a ton of time. I think that interesting. Or 1 p.m. lineups aren't showing up on the lineup builder. I need to fix that. That's weird. I thought, okay. Anyway, yeah, I would say play whatever contest you want to play. I'm just fixing this while I continue to talk. Top 3 wide receivers in DraftKings with an expensive quarterback. So Curtis Samuel's my number 1. I think if you wanted to go Kiki Cutie, you certainly could. And then going down. I would say Brashad Perryman at 3,900 would be the other guy that I would target. Okay. Any thoughts on playing Dalton and GPPs on DraftKings? I think the ceiling isn't high enough, to be honest. Chris Godwin cash viable? I don't think so. I think there's better options this week. Jamal Adams on FanDuel is a sneaky GPP play. Meh. I don't know how I would go this. What's the biggest GPP that I've won? Question. Nothing crazy. 25, 30, 40,000, something like that. I'm not a big GPP player. I'm primarily a cash game player, but I'll put a few lineups in there each week for GPPs. I've been to 5 or 6 live finals. Haven't won any of them, but I've done fairly decent at them. Do I like any DraftKings pass catchers in cash? No, not in cash. All right, so we're just at 9 o'clock. Give it another couple minutes and see if the questions continue to flow in. They're sort of slowing down. So I would say if you have questions, now would be the time to get them in. And if not, we can certainly call it. Jones, Eckler, Montgomery, all 3 viable. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Anyone else? What do I think of the Eagles' defense this week? Probably not. Top 5 wide receivers in cash. I don't know. There's a lot that we've talked about. Samuel's my favorite. I like Robbie Anderson if you have a little bit more salary. Corey Davis is probably one of my top plays. Devontae Adams is in a good spot. I think Justin Jefferson's in a pretty good spot. There's a lot of guys out there. Top defense money, not an issue. Depends on the site. I guess it doesn't depend on the site. Top defense money, not an issue. Probably, I want to go 49ers against Washington or the Seahawks against the Jets. One of those two. Davis over Samuel. Yes. 5 points, I think I have it. Something like that. FanDuel Cash are paying for a quarterback. Would it be Mahomes? Yes. Blowouts don't matter for Mahomes. We saw that against the Jets game. They'll keep throwing. They're not going to slow down. So they're the one team that are blowout proof. I wouldn't play Jonnu. Is Evans Cash viable on FanDuel? No. 37%, I think I have him at right now. Something like that. Okay. So I think that's it. Thanks everyone for coming back. If you have any more questions, DMs are always open on Twitter. Check my Sunday lineup that I post out there. I'll put in my Twitter just really quickly for those that don't have it. And I post all my FanDuel thoughts there for Sunday morning. It's free this year. It will not be free next year. So go ahead and the full article is behind the paywall for Football Guys subscription, but for the Sunday morning update, it'll be on there. Okay. Thanks everyone. Have a good night. Stay safe.